Hi, this is Scott Wilkinson, host of Home Theater Geeks. In episode 323, Robert Heron and I calibrate Leo Laporte's LG B6 OLED TV. So stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Home Theater Geeks is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson for September 29th, 2016. Episode 323. Calibrating Leo Laporte's LG OLED TV. This episode of Home Theater Geeks is brought to you by Epson's new EcoTank printers. With Epson's line of SuperTank all-in-one printers, you can print thousands of documents without running out of ink. EcoTank is loaded and ready to print when you are. Visit epson.com/ecotank to find out more. Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek and editor of avsforum.com. This week I'm in Petaluma, California at Leo Laporte's house. And I'm joined by my good friend Robert Heron here. Hey Robert.
Always a pleasure.
So nice to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, anytime. Thank you.
We are here to calibrate Leo Laporte's OLED TV.
Ooh. Look at that pretty white screen.
We are actually showing a full white screen right now just to prevent any burn-in and make sure all the pixels are exercised equally. We're going to be doing this calibration in standard dynamic mode and standard dynamic range mode, and then we're going to take a look at HDR and see what that looks like. Before we begin, I have several people to thank for this episode who have helped me very much in preparing. First of all is SpectraCal, the company that makes the calibration software we're using called CalMan, and they have made it available to me to use for this event, and I really appreciate that. Also, Guillermo Keller from Colorimetry Research. He allowed me to borrow the meters that we're going to be using for this calibration, and these meters are really amazing. They're very cool. We have two of them. One is the CR250 spectroradiometer. The other is the CR100 colorimeter. And we're going to get into why we need two meters shortly here. But for now, I just want to make sure that Guillermo knows how much I appreciate that. His website is colorimetryresearch.com, so I want to give a shout out there. And also SpectraCal's website is spectracal.com. Also, I'd like to thank Ray Coronado. He is an AVS member and a calibrator who is my Windows guru. I'm not typically on Windows, so he was helping me out. He's also a SpectraCal guru, and he helped me hook up with Guillermo and get these meters. And finally, Dave Abrams. He is a calibrator extraordinaire. Do you know Dave?
I do.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Very knowledgeable and very helpful when you have questions.
Exactly. And he allowed me, I live in LA, we're here up in Northern California, and he allowed me to come into his office where he has a LG B6 OLED as well.
Nice.
To kind of play around and get myself familiar with it. So
we were at a display conference one time, and we were looking at some new technology, and I had a question about a specific meter in a display, and first time I'd met him, and just went through a bunch of stuff with me real quick, and provided good insight that really helped.
Very good, and he's a super busy calibrator in LA. I mean, he goes to all the studios, Universal, NBC, all these places.
They need help.
Yeah.
They all do.
It's true. And Dave's right there helping them out and getting their monitors tuned up to where they need to be. So I really wanted to thank Dave very much for that. Now, we're looking at an OLED TV.
True.
This is a relatively new technology for consumers anyway. Most people have LCD TVs. Right?
Many do. That's the most popular display out there.
By far, because it's a lot less expensive for one thing.
Definitely.
But it's got some inherent problems, right? I mean,
when you talk about LCD, the first thing you'll notice too is usually when you compare it with an OLED specifically, you stand a little bit off axis, and your black level, how dark black can be,
comes up.
It's anything but. It becomes brighter and brighter the more you stand off to the side because of the way the system works.
Right, the way that LCDs naturally work. Also, when you stand off to the side, the colors get less saturated.
And they generally do. And another thing is when you talk about making that pure black. The reason OLED does it so well is each pixel is individually lighted.
Right.
And the pixel next to it can be modulated independently.
Completely independently.
You can have one off pixel and one on right next to it with no interference between the two, any kind of light bleed or glare off axis.
With an LCD, you can turn down one pixel and up the next pixel, but the light has to come from somewhere, and it's coming from behind that panel, and there's a lot of bleed from one pixel to the next. So,
and even the very best LCDs now are using not per pixel, but an array of LEDs behind the screen, where they have more finite control over, more granular control over the display's backlighting system. But when it comes to a per pixel level on an OLED scale, that's where you really start to pick up all the benefits of it. When you can make black darker, it makes colors pop more, and it makes contrast just jump from the screen, and your eye appreciates that more than resolution by itself.
Yep, I totally agree. Which is why high dynamic range is so important. You know, this new thing that but it's not baked in the cake yet. It's still kind of fluid. We don't know everything about it. It's still being developed.
And it's easier for the LCD folks to make brighter displays. And that's to take advantage of that HDR format, where the OLED folks, it'll be curious to see how bright they can make these at certain power constrictions or power envelopes in terms of how much. You can't have a TV putting down or consuming 1,000 watts. Although you might want that.
It'll never get Energy Star rated
exactly.
in that case.
You lose a lot.
So currently, OLED TVs have a peak brightness of about half of what LCDs can do, or a little less, roughly half. So that is the one advantage I think that LCDs have.
Still significantly brighter than many LCDs were even a couple of years ago.
Correct.
And even today's LCDs, the best ones that do HDR and everything, you typically never see that full brightness kick in until there's some sort of HDR content actually going through the system. The very latest TVs are adding a function where you can then turn on that extra brightness for all content in a synthetic way, but at least, you know, if you're buying one of these TVs with the expectation of everything being bright, you're now seeing those options finally this year.
Yeah, exactly. So what we have here is the LG 65-inch B6 model, which is the entry-level OLED. It's the one I recommended Leo to get because while the feature set changes as you go up from the B6 to the E6 to the G6, which is the premier one, the panels are all more or less the same.
Very nice.
You know, so you might as well get an inexpensive one. This one does not have 3D. Which Leo doesn't care about. He's actively doesn't like. So fine, great. Save some money. Get the B6.
Totally. Or the step-up models might have enhanced audio features or a fancier base, but for me, I'm going to be wall-mounting the thing anyway.
Exactly.
This is perfect. And I like the fact that across the board, it seems for 2016 LG's OLEDs are consistent no matter what level you're buying into. As far as at least panel performance goes. So
now Dave told me that in the B6 he has seen some variability in uniformity, particularly black field uniformity or low gray uniformity.
Not surprising. You figure if you're getting relatively similar performance out of the panels, you got to find something to make that separation between, like, oh, let's take the ultra best ones, the ones that give us
the hand-picked ones, and put them in the G6. But otherwise, it's the same.
No, from the front, it's very difficult to tell the difference. Other than this one has a plastic back case to it compared to the glass back. But otherwise, good to go.
Exactly. So we're here to calibrate this TV, and I'm going to look at my notes here, make sure that. And now I'd like to talk about why do we have 2 meters here? Okay, because you do plenty of calibrations all the time. You use 1 meter.
Generally.
Typically, it's a colorimeter, right?
I have a spectrophotometer.
Oh, you do as well.
And I have just a standard colorimeter as well. And there's a reason you need both of those.
Right. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, for the either a spectroradiometer or a spectrophotometer.
This is a spectroradiometer, so they say.
Even more high end, the higher end. Basically, you're using that as an electric eye that can take super precise measurements of exactly what's coming off the screen in terms
of
colors, lights, luminance, everything. And then you can create a color profile for another meter that may run faster or handle darker measurements better.
Exactly what we're doing here.
So typically the high end, the meter that can do the best work is generally going to be the slowest. So
and the more expensive.
Without a doubt. So you can, through software and through great mathematical formulations, actually take that color profile, measure some primary and secondary colors, apply that correction to the other meter, and that is the way to go if you can do it that's what's recommended.
Yep.
And it gives you better results for a wide variety of displays. I mean, you do this with any particular new panel type you're dealing with. I'm even paranoid enough to say do it for each individual model.
Well, and we're going to do that here.
Exactly.
And this is the whole point of this dual setup here, which Ray Coronado, who I mentioned earlier, actually designed this dual mount setup for a tripod. So the spectroradiometer gives us the exact spectral response of the TV, and then we can apply what's called a profile, as you called it, to the colorimeter. The colorimeter is what's called a tri-stimulus device. So it really only it can only sense red, green, and blue, right?
That's it.
And if the particular colors of red, green, and blue that it can sense aren't in line with the red, green, and blue being produced by the TV, you'll get very inaccurate results.
Totally.
So the way to do it is to take the spectroradiometer, measure it, apply that profile to the colorimeter, and then use the colorimeter for everything else.
Totally. That gives you the best results.
It really does.
And if you're not doing that, you got to consider what you're doing exactly there.
Exactly. Exactly right.
Don't take chances if you don't have to.
Exactly right. So we are going to we're going to do this profile on the show.
Okay.
So that people can see exactly how to do it. So the first thing we need to do is what's called synchronize the colorimetry research CR100, and I'm about to do that now, which is basically it reads a white field and calibrate and detects what kind of frequency is being shown, and it's 120 hertz.
Nice.
So that's what we need. That's the first thing we need to do. And then after that, we need to go down here in the CalMan software and profile the meter. And we're going to profile the meter. We're going to, the reference meter, is the CR250. Wait, where's the CR250?
You might have to detect the meter.
Oh,
find other meters that link right below there.
Okay, find more meters.
And then just hit search or whatever.
Yeah, well, colorimetry research. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so we got a 250 and we got a 100. Here's the thing. We had to make sure that the software was recognizing both meters. And it was earlier, and then for some reason it didn't. So now I go to the 100 and, come on. And I can now, it's on, the sync is on, and I can go to meter profile, and the 250 is the reference meter. That's important.
Yes.
Right? And the target meter is the 100, and that's important. Source is the DVDO test pattern generator, which is the test pattern generator we're using. Stimulus level is 100, and
create a new profile.
Add profile.
With your name of choice.
Oh yes, and I get to rename it. And I'm going to rename it Leo's LGB6. Okay, and
if you work with a lot of different meters, it's sometimes good to actually, when you do the profiling like that, to make the file name explicit to what you were doing, like, standard dynamic range with this particular meter and this display or something like that.
Right.
It can help minimize confusion and things
so
like
here,
that.
here now is this automatic process whereby the colorimetry, the 250, the spectroradiometer, is looking at all of these different colors, and notice how long it's taking.
It is. It's doing very precise readings, and it's basically going to take that information and create that color profile.
Correct.
The correction profile for the much faster meter.
Right, the offsets, if you will. Because the colorimeter has filters in it, as I said before, that its native RGB, red, green, blue, or whatever they are, but this is going to offset that to allow it to be sensitive or accurate to this particular TV.
Exactly.
But it does take a little while.
This one does.
It's because that spectroradiometer is pretty slow.
Very thorough.
And very thorough. Exactly right. Okay, so we have it.
No errors. Nice.
No errors. We now have the offsets, which are here. And I think we can just close at that point, right?
Totally.
So then we're done with that.
And then make sure at the top that your profile's selected. And
right. So
looks good. Should actually have the name of the profile.
Yeah, there it is down here, Leo's LGB6.
Perfect.
So that's correct. It's at 120 hertz. So now we could even disconnect the spectra. We're not going to use it anymore.
Totally.
But we won't. It's fine.
It's mounted.
It's mounted. It's there. No problem. Okay. So next step is to, oh, you know what? I should go back and reset to video levels because I set it to PC levels to get 100%.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to reset to video levels. And the thing here is video is specified, it's an 8-bit brightness from 0 to 255, but video restricts that to a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 235. However, we do want to see above 235. We don't necessarily want to see below 16.
Exactly.
But we do want to see above 235 because there is some content up there sometimes.
There can be.
Not supposed to be,
No.
but sometimes there is. So I'm going to reset it to look for video values. Okay. Now we're going to take a look at the pre-calibration. We're just going to see what the TV's doing out of the box.
We did reset it, and we're on the preset we're going to be working with.
Exactly.
So this is kind of telling us how good that preset is right now.
Exactly.
Before we start making any changes.
Exactly. The preset is Expert Dark, I believe.
There's also an Expert Daylight mode as well. You can configure those to do whatever you want, but we're just going to start with the dark mode for a darkroom setup.
Exactly.
Or the typical room lighting setup. And
Right.
if we want to create one
For a bright
that's
room,
extra bright, yeah, we have that
could
other
do that.
preset we can use, and that'll work well.
Okay, so here it goes. We're going to say just go and do your thing.
Read the series.
So it's going to read the series. It's going to read the that white level a little bit. It's going to read the black level, and then it's going to read different steps of gray. 10 different steps of gray. And, you know, you take a look at what we're looking at here, it's pretty darn good.
Not bad.
Not bad.
Although, what's the scaling on that?
Graph. I usually just set it to auto scale it. Oh no, there's the DE2000 errors too.
Right, exactly.
It's okay.
It's, I mean, you know, the delta E, by the way, delta E is a way of specifying error. How bad is it away from where it's supposed to be?
And it factors in the luminance level too, which is nice. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
a good, if you're going to look at one number in terms of is this gray the right shade of gray?
Right,
That's a good number to look at just for overall
right,
color quality.
right. And we can see here that the delta E, the error, is under 5 throughout the brightness range. Now, what we really want is for it to be under 3.
Totally. Or
At
lower.
least. Or lower. We want to get it as low as possible.
1.5. We can do it.
So that's what we're going to do. We also see that the colors are pretty good. The red's a little off, the blue's a little off, the green's pretty good. Cyan, yellow are quite good, magenta's a little off. You can see red has the highest error by far.
Yeah, that may be related to, well, positioning and maybe luminance as well.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. So that is our pre-calibration. And now we're going to go in and look at calibration. And we're going to start with...
This is a good one to run through because it looks at the peak brightness levels all the way up to 255 on there. It should be.
Yeah, which it is, even
And-
though I reset to 235.
Yeah, but this is exactly, you want to look at basically everything at 100% and beyond to
Right.
see, well, maybe they've got it right on the line to where maybe you should drop your contrast a little bit
Right.
because you're getting maybe some banding artifacts or other issues that could be. And this kind of will show you right there if you're clipping any
Right,
of that
in which
information
case
or
we
not.
should go and maybe reduce the contrast a little bit.
Well, let's
but
measure
let's
it
take
and
a
see.
look and see. Let's go see.
We may have to do nothing.
You know? Well, so here we're doing now a sweep, essentially, of luminance values.
And this is using one of the TV's fairly factory calibrated presets. So the pre-readings would be so much more exaggerated to the worse if we were measuring, say, its vivid or dynamic mode.
Right.
And then comparing that to what our work. So
Right.
I lose a little respect for some calibrators who pull that on people because it's like, look, at least show them what the movie mode out of the box would look like before you go and do your work.
Right.
it looks way more impressive if you show them the screwed up mode and then what you did.
Right.
But anyway.
Well, so here we can see that we've got a little excess of blue throughout the brightness range and a little deficiency in red.
True, and the thing you're looking at on this particular chart, though, is how it flattens off just a little bit
at the
peak
end.
brightness. Now, if we lowered the contrast by like 5 points, that would probably take that out.
Right. And in fact, let's take a look at...
And you can add another chart, actually, at the top if you want, and I'll lower that real quick, and
yeah,
we can remeasure it.
I was going to put up ISF contrast. So what we're looking at here...
Whoops. Sorry. I hit the wrong one.
Hit the wrong one.
Go back to...
we've got two people controlling this thing.
Sorry about
here.
that. There's the peak white.
There's the peak white. Okay, but we should do brightness first. To tell you the truth, I always do anyway. I always do the black level first.
Oh, there is no adjusting brightness on this TV. It's where it is.
Well,
unfortunately.
Now where's the LG remote? Oh, you have the LG remote.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look.
Because you can crank this brightness up a lot, and it still will not quite make it to 16.
This is the problem, isn't it?
They
I
purposely
found the same thing.
crush black level on this a little bit,
Yeah.
to hide some little minor skirmishes, you could say.
Yeah, this is one of the problems that anyway with OLED we've had so far. Whoops, not contrast.
There you
brightness. Is that it does tend to crush blacks a little bit. So I'm just going to raise up. Sorry, there we go. I'm going to raise it up way beyond where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And there we can see everything. What we should really be able to see, we should not see the square labeled D16. We should see the square labeled D17.
Ideally, yeah.
Ideally. Now, if we lower this back down, we've already, I think I've sort of lost.
Oh, no, it's there.
Is it there? Okay, you're...
keep on going.
Keep on going. Whoops.
Keep on going.
There we go.
One more.
One more.
One more. There you go.
Okay, so 53 gets us a little, maybe 52.
17's barely visible.
And how's it now? Can you see it?
And whoever says these TVs don't have some angle issues.
They do, in fact, have angle issues. They're less problematic than LCDs, but they are.
I'd say that's pretty close because
Yeah.
18 has a slight glow. 17 looks like
On
it barely
Dave's,
does.
I set it to 51.
Yeah.
So I think
Very
51, 52 is still pretty good.
Generally don't want to make too many changes to the brightness on most of these TVs.
I agree.
Very rarely I have to change the brightness on an LCD.
Right.
And this TV also has other gamma setups that'll change the dark
that's-
end of the grayscale.
And that's what I was going to actually look at. I was going to look at gamma here and see what we have set up here. Oh, we have BT1886, which is proper. It's the way it should be.
It is. It does a better job in terms of analyzing the TV's actual performance rather than this theoretical perfect display that can do a 0 black.
Right.
So the issue I find, though, is that if you really want to see that full grayscale representation, I ended up having to switch this to 1.9. And that looked good for a bright room setup, but ideally you'll just leave it right on 1886.
Yeah.
But of all the presets, when I just looked at this dark gray setup, and I went through all these presets, 1.9 was the one that seemed
let's
to
take
get
a
it
look
the
at it.
closest.
You know, there we can see if you go back and look at the, sorry about the cursor, it did bring up the low.
And that was before we made any adjustment to the brightness level. We did bring it up a couple notches, so I can barely see 16 a little.
Okay, so now we could probably bring that brightness down another click.
However,
Yeah.
for the setup we're doing for this room, if you can leave it
Probably
on
keep it at
BT80,
BT86. I agree.
because that's how they set it up originally.
Yeah.
The software is kind of expecting that.
Yep.
And unless we had a reason to go with one of those other gammas for a different room lighting condition,
Right.
Like if this were trying to be used outdoors or in a very bright room,
Right.
I'd be optimizing for those lower gamma levels that generally produce a brighter picture.
Right. Okay, so now we've got the brightness set. We'll take a look at the contrast. I guess I have to go back here. There we go. Let's take a look at contrast, and let's take a look at...
Measure, or knock contrast down to 80, and then redo another measurement for the peak luminance, and you'll see how that graph changes.
Okay. I just wanted to take a quick look at the contrast pattern.
chart?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
It wasn't bad.
No, it didn't look too bad. Okay, now we can see we can see
there is some clipping there.
There is some clipping. So we should be able to see all these squares, but we can't from 248 up to 254. So I agree. I think we should bring down the contrast a little bit to avoid clipping. And we're going to do that in here, and we're going to do that right here. And
this is just straight up eyeballing it. Now, likewise, if you crank the contrast setting up, you lose all these peak details and it just floods the white.
Right. So for example, if I crank it up beyond where it's supposed to go, we can't see any of those squares at all.
That's just missing detail.
And you're just missing white detail at that point. If you're watching like Art of Flight, or for example, The Fifth Element, the white waiter jackets, those go into these levels. And so I want to see them.
You can also introduce banding and other artifacts by taking contrast too high.
Right, so another reason to bring it down. And now as we bring it down, you can see these squares starting to appear.
And if you're doing something like this by eyeball, you're looking for the squares becoming discolored as you turn it up, in addition to simply the square disappearing into the background.
Right.
So if either of those conditions are happening, generally you keep turning contrast down to a point.
Now here we can see everything except 254.
And that's fine. And those last two are there.
Yeah.
They're very blended in.
Now it started at 85. Do you think this is too low? If we crank it up another notch or two, you can still see them.
I would simply take it to 80 and remeasure it, and maybe take it to 75 again, because you'll see that roll off at the top of that chart disappear probably at 80.
Okay.
And then there's probably no reason to go any lower than that.
All right, so we're going to try this again. Let me get rid of that stupid cursor. Hopefully that will disappear in a second.
It takes a second.
It takes a second. Okay, I'm going to reshoot this. And it's going to again give us... So we still need to do some coloring, some color work, but look at that, it no longer rolls off. Slightly.
Barely, yeah. We could maybe take it down a notch or two more.
Yeah.
And then the nice thing about this software actually is you can create multiple tabs at the top there where that little plus sign is.
Right, however,
so you can do your
only
charts.
History 1 gets charted in a report.
Don't give anybody charts unless they're paying me to do that.
Oh, well, I wanted to give Leo the charts myself here, so.
It also gives you an indication on there what the peak luminance is for what we just measured, and right now it's at about 294.
294 nits. Yeah. Which you divide by 3 roughly to get the foot Lamberts. Anyway, so I am gonna take it down another notch or two.
Yeah, totally up to you. And the other thing too is the OLED light. That's pretty independent of the rest of it. That's effectively like your backlight control
on an LCD TV.
Set that to whatever you need it to be for the overall room.
By the way, what is? Let's see. I'm going to take it to 75 and see what happens. You know, why the heck not?
I have found that if you on certain TVs, if you take the contrast too low or low enough, it will affect how the grayscale setup works in terms of where it's controlling the grayscale. It can move around the control points on you. Usually shifts them in one direction or the other. So
well, we'll see as we get into grayscale. So now there's no roll off at all.
Oh yeah, that's very flat.
And
that's even better than the previous setting.
Even better than the previous one.
So that should indicate there's no sign of any kind of roll off on any of the particular color channels. Ideally, you'd see that in that chart in addition to the verification that we just produced with that.
Right.
That's a really good sign, just in terms of where to start.
Yep.
And we've gone through, we're using a preset too that disabled a lot of other stuff that we normally would turn off anyway.
Right.
There is one setting left on here for edge enhancement.
But did you leave that on?
It's so subtle, I don't even worry about it.
You don't worry about it?
Right. I'll check a sharpness chart, and we can turn it on or off. I have just seen no issue with it by leaving it on, and it's left on at the factory.
Right.
Although generally speaking,
now
you turn most of that stuff off.
Yes, you do. Okay, so we're going to do a 2-point calibration at 30% and 80%.
Okay.
Now I've been told, Dave Abrams said to me, you know, and others have too, better not to mess with the low end, the dark end. Better just to not even worry about it.
It's so easy to screw it up.
Exactly. Again, on these particular OLEDs, they are not perfect. They have their idiosyncrasies. So I'm going to shoot it. I'm just going to do a 30% and an 80% and see what happens.
And I find that this is something just about anybody can do with affordable hardware and just giving you an ability to take a measurement like this and look at the darker gray and the brighter gray and make the white balance adjustment accordingly.
Right. Now, when you say inexpensive equipment,
like $300 or
well,
less.
you mean a colorimeter,
Yeah.
but that had better be profiled
Yeah.
for the TV you're doing.
Yeah.
So you need to have access to a spectro at some point.
Or it's done at the factory. It can be programmed.
Maybe it has some presets.
I will say the software providers here actually have sell products that they can field upgrade.
Okay,
And that are
Spectre-
relatively affordable too.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Okay. So we see here that at the low end, we have a little bit of deficiency in blue and red, and the same at the high end. We have a delta E, an error of about 5 in the low end and about 4 in the high end.
Yeah, very lacking in red, generally speaking.
Generally speaking, as we saw in that previous curve.
And even just looking at the grayscales we were just looking at for the brightness and the contrast setup,
Yeah.
it didn't look a neutral shade of gray.
Right.
So,
It was probably too hot, or too high a color temperature, too low red, not warm enough. So we're going to go into picture mode settings, and we're going to go down here to expert controls, and then we're going to go down to white balance, which is where we have our color temperature white balance.
Oh, nice thing about this TV too, it actually lets you select, do you want to do patterns from an outside source or the ones built into
ones.
the TV?
Very
So,
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's kind of neat.
So we're going to do the high points, and we see that red is deficient and blue. Well, so we'll add some red. That's what we need to do. We need to add some red. So we're going to add some red. Oh, but what we need to do is we need to put up, before we can do that, we need to put up the high end pattern
And read continuous.
and read continuous, so that it tells us as we change it what happens.
Yep.
So we're going to just change it.
And if you're really lucky, these menus on the screen aren't influencing what's being measured in the center.
Which in this case, generally speaking, if it's the menu's way down here, probably not, but it can.
Yeah, it's so annoying.
It's so annoying. I so agree with you on that.
If I could say one thing about the Vizio TVs and having that tablet as the controller with very little on the screen.
Oh, very nice.
That helps.
Very nice.
So.
Okay, so look, now we're almost, I'm going to, before I finish up with red, I'm going to go to blue.
Yeah.
And bring that down a little bit.
If you're going to be playing around with white balance controls, try to stick with adjusting blue and then
red. Yes.
Stay away from green because that is what's factored into the luminance output. And you adjust green, you're adjusting a lot.
Yeah.
Just
you
in
try,
a general
generally
way
speaking,
to put it.
Yeah, don't mess with green. So
Unless you're ready to play with gamma.
Right. Okay, so now look at that.
Very nice.
It's very nice. We got a delta E under 1.
Curious if that influenced your dark reading.
Well, let's go see. I'm going to go back to dark reading.
That's depending on the TV and what you're dealing with. You could have just incredible interactivity between the two.
Now look at that. You could, but and look at that. Red and blue used to be very different, and now they're very much the same. Although green is still quite a bit
giving you the middle finger,
so to speak. Exactly. So I'm a little loath to adjust the low end, but let's give it a shot. So we're going to go back. Well, I can use a back button on the remote. We're going to now adjust the low point. And we're going to then we're going to have to increase red.
And that's the beauty of having a meter to let you do real-time feedback.
Yes.
You can get stuff pretty dang accurate, or at least not overdo any of your adjustments.
Yep. So now, okay. Sometimes I don't like this magic remote.
I hear you.
Thing.
I carry around a regular Samsung stick remote with me, just so if I ever need, I don't know, a picture size button or
right.
or the tool button.
Okay,
it's one click away.
So now I've got blue pretty good. So I'm going to go back to red. Give that another click. Oh, too much. I think that's pretty good. And look, we got delta E way under 1 in both cases. I love when that happens.
Visually indistinguishable from perfect.
Exactly. Okay, good. So let's get out of this menu. We'll do it. We'll shoot it again.
Did that mess with the bright?
We shall see.
We shall.
I'm just going to give.
It's always good to hit stop.
Oh yeah,
when it's
hit
in
stop.
That continuous mode.
Yep. I agree. Okay, so now
There you go.
let's give this a little look-see. Oh, look at that!
Little interaction.
A little interaction. Now we have too much blue and red in the high end. So we're going to
Try backing off.
backing off the high end. So we're going to go here again. We're going to do this. We're almost done with this part. Expert mode. Go down to expert controls. Go to white balance. We go to the high point. And we need to bring down red. Oh, sorry. Continuous reading. Okay, so we want to bring that down. And then we want to bring down blue.
Very nice.
And bingo, look at that. That's looking really nice.
And now we can see how that messed up our
Now, messed
dark
up the
grays.
low end, okay? How did it mess up the low end? We shall see.
It kind of goes back to that point you made of if you're going to pick one spot to adjust, stick to the bright grays.
Yeah.
80, 90, 100%.
Exactly.
Usually about 70, 80%.
Yep.
If you're going to pick
and
one
notice that we did. So we're going to have to bring up red at least one click. Oops. Bring up.
And with some iteration, you will come to a balance where everything is pretty good.
Yeah, is as close as you can get. Okay, so we're going to now take a look at the high point again. And click on the high one. And now we've got a little too much red and blue. So we'll click those down by one each. Not bad.
Yeah, that's pretty good for 2 point.
For 2 point?
Sub about 0.5 or less.
Or
for
less
the
of
error.
delta E. So no one can see that.
They consider 1 to be where if it's a static image, 2 colors next to each other. If it's below that, it'd be very difficult to see the difference. So that's a good result.
I think we're good. Excellent.
Good from this point.
So before we continue, let's take a moment to thank our sponsor for this episode. This episode of Home Theater Geeks is brought to you by Epson. Epson's revolutionary cartridge-free EcoTank line of printers for home and office introduce a new age in printing. The EcoTank ET4550 wireless all-in-one printer doesn't use ink cartridges. It features an amazing, innovative, refillable ink tank, earning it the title of CES 2016 Innovation Awards honoree. No more out-of-ink frustration. It includes up to 2 years of ink, equal to about 11,000 black pages or 8,500 color pages. You can save up to 80% on ink with low-cost replacement bottles. It's powered by Precision Core printing technology. It has auto two-sided printing and a 30-page auto document feeder, and easy wireless printing from tablets and smartphones. All EcoTank printers deliver an unbeatable combination of convenience and value. With Epson's EcoTank line of printers, you'll have the freedom to print without running out of ink. The Epson EcoTank system was named the 2016 Small Biz Windows Printer of the Year. So visit epson.com/ecotank today to transform the way your home, office, or work group prints. For the best combination of ease and value, turn to the Epson EcoTank printers. That's epson.com/ecotank. And we thank Epson very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks. Epson, exceed your vision. So we just did a 2-point grayscale adjustment. We're going to take a look at the whole grayscale now to see what it did to the entire range of brightness from dark to bright. It's possible that doing what we just did measured beautifully here
At the 2 points we just looked at.
at the 2 points we looked at, but then the other points in the gray scale and from dark to bright might be all messed up. So
Did something very unexpected. So
we shall see.
And this is where I see a separation between some of the consumer calibration packages versus the more expensive software options too.
Right.
And there are also free software options too. People can also explore once you have your meter. So
So you got to spend something on a meter.
Yep.
I don't know any of the free options.
Oh, like HCFR and Display Cal.
Okay.
Or two of them. And
okay.
They're long-term projects. I want to say it's right. They just changed the name. I think it is Display Cal now. But HCFR, it was a French project, I believe. HRCF? No, HCFR.
HCFR, I think you're right.
Let me Google that.
Okay, so now we are going to take a look at the full grayscale. So it's going to read white, and then it's going to read black, and then it's going to try and read black. Now this colorimeter goes down pretty low.
Oh, good.
So it goes down to 0.0002 foot Lamberts, I think.
Excellent.
So that's really good.
I have no idea what that means in nits.
It's basically times 3.
Times 3? Still pretty good.
Yeah.
Gamma's tracking nice.
Gamma's tracking really nice, and look at that RGB balance. It's really good across the entire range.
That graph is a little compressed, so you can exaggerate it a little bit.
It's true.
But
I forget how to do that.
Oh, just right-click on it for properties, and then you can select.
Okay. Property.
Auto scale it, or auto axis down on the axis properties, or you can select. Auto is going to make it pretty big, and it'll exaggerate the errors, but. So don't.
Oh yeah, maybe not do that.
Yeah, but if you want to set like a min or max to 10 or 5, that's something else you can do too. Otherwise, you can just leave it right where it is, or you can change it to a column view, and that might just give you a little more perspective in terms of seeing some of the things, and then maybe leave it on fixed axis instead of manual or That way, it's a little different way of looking at the same information. So.
Yeah, exactly. So again, all we're doing is we're changing how the software displays the data that it just collected.
But our DE2000 values are looking good.
Really
they
good.
Start spiking a little toward the brightest grays, but you can see
still it's not much above 2.
The adjustment you made at 80 is the lowest point of error.
Yes.
And the adjustment at about 30. So
right. So that's where you get for 2 point. Now, do we want to go in and do 20 point?
It's up to you.
It'll take a while.
We can.
Okay, after much discussion about whether or not to engage in the 20-point grayscale calibration, we entered into it, we started to do it, we realized it was going to take so long because it's so interactive between the different luminance levels that we decided not to do it in this case, especially because we don't need to, because the 2-point grayscale came out really good. So we're going to leave it at 2 points.
The overall error, the average error, was less than 1.
Yes.
So that's generally considered very good.
Exactly.
And the only oddity we really saw was getting into the peak bright grays, and there was just a little extra red there, which is there could be far worse errors. And given the overall results, I'm pretty pleased.
Yeah, I am too.
Color check time.
Color check time. First, before we do that, I'm going to just run a grayscale, multi-grayscale, just to see where it is across the whole area here.
Checking it from...
Just checking it.
0 to 100 at 10 point steps,
correct,
basically.
Correct. Just to take a look and see where it's at. We can see that it's a little red heavy in the high end.
We have exaggerated this graph, though, just to highlight.
That's true. That's true. This, in the real world, if we were to look at this graph, which we'll take a look at in a second, in not such an exaggerated view, because we are such perfectionists.
But look at that, every error well under 2.
Yep, well under 2, and the average is 1.1.
Excellent.
So I'm perfectly happy with that.
Compared to where it started.
Compared to where it started, it's really very good. Total gamma 2.3.
Perfect.
Very good. Contrast ratio 29,000 to 1, almost 30,000 to 1.
That's very good.
Which is really good.
That's a dark black level.
Yeah. And the white point at 0.313, 0.327, perfect.
Very
absolutely
nice.
Perfect. Foot Lambert 73, a little low for 100. I mean, ideally for SDR we would want 100, but I'm okay with that.
Foot Lamberts versus nits, though. So
true.
So we've got it up pretty bright.
It's still pretty bright. It's 251 nits, which is what we thought before. All right. So now we're just going to take a look at the color, in particular the color sweeps, which we actually looked at before. And we saw that it's really good.
It is.
Except the red.
Red is oddly optimized.
Which we think is optimized more for DCI, which we mentioned earlier. Now, I don't want to mess with the color management system.
I hear you.
So I'm gonna just say this is good.
Considering how good that looks, now there is actually a way we could overlay the P3 points on that chart just to see if they happen to line up with that red. But we would have to make such wild adjustments to the red primary in particular. And
right.
Everything else is looking really good.
Really good.
So yeah, I would agree not to mess with that a whole hell of a lot, at least until we take a look at more content.
Yeah, exactly.
Including HDR stuff.
Which is what we're going to do next, after we just take a quick look. Luminance sweeps, I don't think we need to do that.
That's just seeing how consistent color is from the various shades, or from the different brightnesses. Every color should be the same no matter how bright or dark the color is.
Right, exactly.
But that's never the case on any
TV.
TV.
We'll take a look at it, might as well.
It can make you cry.
Yeah, the black. See, the black is so deep that even this colorimeter can't really measure it. It put it way out here by magenta, but it's irrelevant.
You know, I bet you it's picking up some of the room light through that top layer filter, because you can almost see a kind of a red cast to it a little bit.
Yep. You're exactly right. But look at this. All the other colors are right on the money.
Well, the grays are good.
The grays are good, I mean. And the red is not so great.
Well, the red is interestingly optimized.
Yeah,
they've chosen that primary on purpose.
I think so. Look at that. It's all clustered right around that point.
That's consistent, though. Actually, that's better than a lot of LCDs I'll see in terms of measuring the different steps at a particular color.
Right.
If it's not consistent with all of them, I'd be very impressed.
Really happy. Yeah. Look at that. All the greens are really close together. Now what we're doing is measuring the colors at different luminance levels to see if they stay where they're supposed to on the triangle of the color gamut. And so far,
just because we're changing the brightness of a color, it shouldn't change the color itself.
It shouldn't change the coordinates in this graph.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is different from the saturation sweep that we looked at earlier.
It is. That's two separate items.
Two separate items. And man, this
isn't bad, actually. This
really
is better than a lot of LCDs I see, definitely.
Yeah. Blue is a little undersaturated overall, but not tremendously.
The oddity here is also, with red being where it is, you are missing, especially along the top between green and red, you're missing some of the most saturated oranges and browns and things like that.
Well, we're going to take a look at the color checker next, which is going to show us a bunch of different color points like flesh tones and different colors that are common in material, in real content.
More representative than looking at these extreme edge cases of max saturation or max luminance.
Yeah, exactly. So
I look at the color checker probably more than anything in terms of overall, how's it looking, or is it undersaturated where everything's pulled in toward the white point a little bit, or is it blown out a little too far, and which way you want to go with that.
Right. Now these yellows are a little less consistent.
I love a good yellow.
I love a good yellow too.
But you can see where they're hitting a little low because it can't reach that because red is not quite in the corner where it should be.
Right.
There's just no physical way to make that color.
Yeah.
If your primaries aren't there.
Right, exactly.
You can't mix a color that, exists outside of your primaries.
Okay, so before we go on here, the reds obviously have the most error. And we know this.
We've seen it.
Pretty obvious.
And the controls are provided to correct this graph, but our concern would be that it would affect other things.
Other things really negatively.
Considering all the other colors are looking really good, but the color checker like you're running right now is the way to go.
Now we're running the color checker, which is what that's going to do is it's going to show us all kinds of different, like blue sky, foliage, purplish blue, yellow green. These are light skin, dark skin, right? So these are the colors that show up in real content, and we'll see how well they do.
I want to say these samples are based upon Pantone values too.
Right.
It's like
which are standard values.
Here are colors you definitely want to be reproducing accurately.
Right. And again, the white point is just spot on the money.
That's really nice.
Which is really nice. So let's see, that's blue sky. Where did that go? That's not bad. Foliage is right where it's supposed to be.
Those skin tone errors I see pretty consistently on this display.
Yeah.
So there's always a couple colors that are a little off. And
right. Notice this orange is kind of off.
anything dealing with the red mixing is going to be off with its current setup because of where the red primary is at.
Exactly.
It's an odd red.
It's an odd red.
But you know there's a reason they chose that.
Yeah, it's for HDR.
It appears so.
I think you're right. That's a very good conjecture. Green's right on the money. Cyan's not bad. Magenta's really good.
Also, too, with the 1931 chart we're looking at, too, the uniformity errors aren't consistent on this chart. So that's something else to keep in mind. You can flip it over to the 1976 version if you want to nitpick it. But this is still visually telling you where you need to be.
Yeah, yeah. And again, the errors are in the oranges and the reds, a little bit in the blue.
I could mess with red, but then I'd be interesting to see what else it would do.
Yeah, that would then take us down another rabbit hole.
I don't think we're going to be able to move the 100% red on target, but I bet you we could get 20, 40, 60, 80 closer to target. And that would be a check I could do, and we could see if it would help or not.
Okay.
It wouldn't take much to just adjust one.
One color and see. Well, okay. Let's see if
it's worth doing.
Yeah, exactly.
But overall, for the foliage, for your blues, and for most color on there, it looks really good.
Pretty good, yeah. Okay, so finally we'll do a post-calibration run. So this is going to be a sort of an overall summary run, and the data in this window will give us sort of overall picture of what we've done.
We did the before measurement.
Right.
This is the after.
Correct. And so far the errors in white are looking very good.
Very low.
Very low, which is great. They're now looking at the colors. Once again, the red hue is off.
Luminance values are pretty good though for the colors. How bright should that color be?
Right, exactly.
Is close to where it should be.
Yep. So and look at this red RGB balance. I mean, that just looks great. Now, of course, we're at a very zoomed out level here.
We've smushed it a little.
We've smushed it.
No,
yeah.
but that is significantly improved from where we started.
Yeah. So, for example, we can look at where we started, which is here. And you can see we have an under-representation of red, an over-representation of blue. And then when we go to
very consistent. What we're talking about is very subtle. I mean, yes, it could be better fine-tuned, but the adjustment might screw up other parts of it. Or you make that one adjustment and it's going to send it in a totally different direction.
Totally different direction.
We're so close to spot on there.
Yeah, exactly. So we look at the post again. It's
that was your preview, and here's the after view.
Yeah, this is the after view.
Oh, I'm sorry, that is way better.
Never mind.
What the heck was I looking at before?
Yeah,
excellent.
Yeah, so that's post. This is pre.
And that's at the same scaling.
Yeah, and that's at the same scaling.
We've much tightened up.
Yeah. So 2-point calibration. Did a very nice job. Not perfect, but I'm perfectly happy with it.
That looks really good.
Yeah. Now, you know what? Just for grins here, I would like to do the spectral. Oh, and this requires the spectro. But I'd love to see what the spectrum of this set looks like. So I'm gonna go back to the
fascinating.
This is fascinating, and it's not part of the normal reporting of CalMan software because Ray Coronado explained it to me. Well, what use is it? Well, it's not any use except to us geeks who just are curious.
For people making light sources. Yeah. They're the people who care about this stuff.
Right. So I'm going to go back to the spectroradiometer as soon as I can. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to go to the CR250 because that's what you need to measure a spectrum, the entire spectrum of the TV.
The other meter would probably do it, but it wouldn't give you nearly the resolution.
Exactly. These bands on this meter are 5 nanometers.
You can do it very fine.
Really nice.
I have like a more 8-bit looking chart when I do it with my meter.
Okay, so now we're going to run the spectrum just to see what it looks like. And I ran it on the B6 down in LA.
Oh, cool.
And it was sort of as expected, but I'm just curious.
It's a curious light system in this TV.
Right.
In terms of what it is and how it works.
Yep.
And why they made the design choices they did for what they can produce with this. And
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
I am.
I mean,
too.
I want a 2000 nit OLED that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, 2000 nit LED, LCD does exist, but only in a reference monitor for studios and mastering houses, and that's, in the 5 figures.
And if they can continue to push the narrowness of the spectral characteristics of their primaries too,
Right.
which you see that all kind of coming.
You do, but of course, narrow spectral primaries give you another problem, which is called metamerism.
Oh,
right.
Well, nobody sees the same color.
This is a weird thing.
That's true.
This is if you have red, green, and blue that are very narrow, like laser light, then you run into a problem called metamerism. And what that means is, Robert and I are sitting here watching the TV, and we see different colors. We don't see the same colors because of the way that our eyes work and our human visual system works. Okay, there's a picture of the spectrum of this TV.
Less chunky than the graph I'm able to produce.
Well, CalMan, apparently, it's only pretty low res, so you got this.
Oh no, but on my version of that, it's very blocked.
It's very blocky. Okay.
You barely get any of the information.
All right.
But that's very different from what you'd get on most LCDs nowadays.
Correct.
Specifically, like if you looked at one of the new Samsung models that
Yep.
has the blue LED backlight with the quantum dot,
Yep.
diffusion layer.
Yep.
You get better peaks between red, blue, and green.
Right.
The chart we're looking at here, green and red are a little more mudded together, but there is energy there, and they're clearly able to get that out to the screen where it is. But that's going into the future, you want those as close to, you want that hump basically to exist right over the point you want for red, blue, and green in order to give you the most energy.
Right, and this is doing a pretty good job
with
of
the least
that.
mixing. For an OLED, that's characteristic OLED right there. For a white OLED material.
Yeah.
Pushing through a color filter.
Right, which is exactly the way the LG OLEDs work. So good. So that satisfies our geek curiosity,
Because say in order to do a pure green or a pure red, you basically have to filter out everything else.
Right, and then you get those narrow primaries, and then you get the metamerism problem.
There you go.
So this avoids that. It's always a trade-off, isn't it?
Without a doubt.
There's always something.
But not bad.
Not bad.
I'm not always wanting more.
Yeah. Okay, so we have done a calibration, 2-point calibration. We improved things quite a bit.
The grayscale went from being off, but I'll give this TV credit. It's consistent in its how it was adjusted at the factory.
Right. How it was off.
Our 2-point adjustment produced another
able to
consistent result, and for that I'm really happy.
Yeah. Now, we could have gotten it better with 20 points, but how long would that have taken? Hours.
Couple hours, minimum.
Minimum.
It adds a lot to the time.
Yeah, exactly. So now I think it's time.
A whole other minefield of issues that can crop up next.
And then there's the color management system, which we really didn't want to touch, and I'm glad we didn't. We could have maybe fixed that, but let's see with real content.
I'll sneak in there afterwards.
Okay, all right. But let's watch some content.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, now we've switched over to HDR, high dynamic range, and we're going to use these meters before we tear them down to look at the HDR performance of this set. Now, we're going to profile the colorimeter again, just because we want to make sure that it's perfectly set up for HDR. So we're going to add profile.
There you go.
And we're going to rename it Leo's. What?
I think you.
There, oh, it's just slow.
Oh no, you're right.
LG.
That is a quirk of that software.
Yeah. B6 HDR. Oh, come on.
Oh, you should be able, if it's still there.
Yeah,
maybe.
it may still be there. Let's see. Why is this going so slow? Okay, B6 HDR.
Yeah.
That's what I want. And the reference meter is the 250. Target meter is the 100. Single pass.
Do we need to initialize the CR100 again?
I don't think so. It already knows that it's at 120 hertz.
Oh, okay.
So I think
it's just a matter of what refresh rate you're operating at.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So I think we're ready to go. We're going to do a single pass. You sure you want to do this? Yes, I'm sure I want to do this. So it's going to run through its thing again. Notice that it's already quite a bit brighter.
Significantly.
Yeah, significantly brighter. There's this weird sparkling on the left side of the screen, which is undoubtedly coming from the signal generator system. By the way, we should say that we have taken the DVDO, what's it called?
Is it the AV Lab TPG?
AV Lab TPG, which is the signal generator that we use for the standard dynamic range calibration. It's a 4K, but it's standard dynamic range. When you add an HD Fury integral processor, you daisy chain it basically after the signal processor, it adds HDR metadata and expands the actual brightness of the signal. So now we have a profile there.
Oh, cool.
So what we saw there was quite a bit brighter than what we saw before with SDR, and rightly so. That's exactly what it should be.
I'd click next. And
okay, so I just want to make sure we're on the 100.
That's right. Do you have the right
We are on
meter?
the 100.
Excellent.
So we're good there. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm just going to click next and run through this workflow. Don't need to find a meter or the source. We know what we're doing.
Took care of our metadata needs.
Exactly. So here's the pre-calibration view, which is probably all we're going to get because we're not going to calibrate HDR because it's just too weird.
It's fun. Fun for crazy people.
It's fun for crazy people. The problem here is that the HDR calibration controls that the TV gives us are wonky, to say the least.
They are interesting.
So we've got some pretty serious errors here. And I'm sure we're going to see that the brightness rolls off. The colors are pretty out there. Oh, what the hell is that?
Oh, is it doing its every 60 seconds?
No, this was another sparkly thing over here.
Actually, that might be another thing we needed to check within the software.
Right.
Because of the TV's dimming mode. I didn't check to see that we re-enabled that feature, so it did the frame insertion.
There it is again.
Although we're just getting odd signaling coming through here. I could try a different port, because it's not on every test pattern.
Right.
It's only on certain signals coming from that source.
Well, look at, I mean, you know, the delta E's are terrible.
However, above, say, roughly 70%, that's where you get into the HDR, the peak, how it's handling the brightest portion of the picture, and every TV does that a little different. And it's more about the EOTF in terms of its roll-off of that information.
Right.
And that's the part that is still in flux in terms of it's not going to be a hard point that it rolls off on any of these TVs. That's currently where some development's being done in terms of how that signal goes out of the range of the majority of the video picture and gets into that super bright section in terms of how to represent that data with the differences between the mastering displays they're using in Hollywood versus what we're having in our homes, which can't quite match that brightness.
Right,
so,
exactly. That is a problem, isn't it? Because with SDR, the mastering studio masters to 100 nits. The TV at home should be calibrated to 100 nits.
Never is.
You're done. Well, it never is, but it could be.
Totally.
Here, we're in a different situation. So we have to have what's called tone mapping, which means that as the picture gets brighter and brighter, at some point the TV can't cope anymore, and so it's just going to have to roll off and keep being the same brightness even at higher and higher values. So this is pretty funkalicious.
It's hard to even tell what to do.
It is hard to tell what to do because, for example, if we get the remote for the TV, thank you.
I should double check too that we've turned on that frame insertion mode.
Okay, let's do that real quick. Where's that in? That's in the...
right there in the gear, I believe. And then application preferences.
Application preferences.
I might be one off. Next tab over. Always the exciting part here.
Yeah.
Pattern insertion is enabled.
Enabled.
All right,
okay, so it's good. All right, but if we look at the TV, if we look at the settings in HDR mode.
That's true. What HDR mode?
Oh, and we should actually not be in HDR bright. We should be in HDR standard.
Interesting.
That's how interesting that it defaulted to bright. I've seen it default to standard. That's the one we really need. So
that will give us a
we're going to go do that again, what we just did. But when you notice, when we go to expert controls and we go to white balance, it only gives you 20 point.
Interesting.
And it gives you code values that you have to choose, which are different than the code values the software gives you. And you just said to me earlier today that these might actually be luminance values.
That was my assumption, based on the numbers that were there versus what I was measuring. And I was like, what else is aligning here? And it's like, oh, it just simply could be the peak brightness, or the peak luminance. And,
but I got to tell you, when I did this at Dave's on his 55-inch B6, and you tried to use these code values, and I thought they were code values. I said, well, why isn't it going up to 940, which is where it should go to? Your explanation makes a lot of sense, but when I tried to do a 20-point calibration, the code values in the software weren't the same as the code values here, and I had no idea whether I was adjusting the right one or not.
At one point, I created like a table in a spreadsheet just to see if I could get them all to match up, and that way I wouldn't have to go back every time and play the guessing game, but that's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work.
And it didn't really work out.
We're at warm 2 color temperature, so okay, you know what? Let's reshoot this.
Yep. Instead of the bright mode, we're
instead
in the
of HDR
mode.
bright, we're in.
There was a vivid mode too. So
yeah, let's no thanks. I'm not going to go there.
World records for brightness.
Man, oh man, oh man. Okay, so we're just going to go back to here, and we're going to reshoot this.
Yeah.
After the.
Or you could do it in another tab, or however you want it.
No. I want it here so I can get at least something in the report.
Gotcha.
Okay, there it is. Here we go.
As we wait for the cursor. We still have this weird sparkling. I don't know what's going on with that. I wonder if that's going to affect. I have different cables I can throw in too. If you think it.
You know, that does look like it might be a cable issue. To tell you the truth,
it doesn't harm anything. It's swapping out a cable.
Yeah. Okay, we just replaced the HDMI cables. You remember we were having some of that sparkly issue on some of the test patterns. It's gone. So clearly, the powered HDMI cables were the problem.
One of them. Or maybe both.
We replaced both of them, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we don't know which one it was. We could have been in more of a troubleshooting mode, but let's keep this rolling.
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay, so now we have the, we don't have that sparkly issue, and we chose HDR standard mode. We wanted to look at saturation sweeps, and for some reason that neither of us quite understand, the software is not actually doing sweeps like it says it's going to. So instead, we're going to just do a color checker analysis, and we're going to show you where the main color points are in the 3 different color systems.
This also includes the 100% primaries for DCI as well, which is really nice at the end of this.
Okay.
So this will give us a good indication too of maybe what they were doing with that red primary.
With that red primary, okay. For now, we're going to do the color checker, which is like we did before. It just shows a bunch of different sort of normal kind of colors that you would see in content. And here we go. We're just going to shoot that. And it's going to go through some gray levels, and then dark skin tone, light skin tone, blue sky, that sort of thing. And so far, these aren't looking too bad. Blue flower, bluish green. Let's see where orange goes. Oh, that's not bad.
You know, I'm kind of liking the default color for HDR better than SDR. At least
it's looking more accurate. It's looking like it's going where it's supposed to go. Look at that. Even
there may be an issue with this related to Rec 709, and yeah, everything looks.
Look at that red is much better.
Yes. And this is using the updated 76 chart as well.
Correct. Correct.
This TV obviously was set up with this preset to do really good HDR.
Right. So it's a good thing we aren't going to do HDR calibration because looks like it sort of doesn't need it.
Wouldn't touch the color.
Yeah, wouldn't touch the color, certainly. Okay, now we're going to just look at the color gamut at 100% of 2020, P3, and 709. We're just going to shoot those and take a look at them. For some reason we don't understand, this pattern is called saturation sweeps, which means it should be sweeping through a variety of colors, of saturation values for each color, but it doesn't. It's only giving us...
Stuck at 100%.
It's stuck at 100%, and I don't know why. We will certainly be talking to SpectraCal about that.
And this clearly, we're not anywhere close to full...
No.
BT 2020 color coverage.
No,
but
which we can't expect from this TV.
And the DCI spec, though, that Hollywood currently aims at, and this TV is capable of reproducing.
Well, then let's see what the P3 saturation looks like.
Really nice.
We shall see.
But this is also showing it within the 2020 container.
Correct.
So,
what I would love to see here, here's another suggestion for SpectraCal, is you have the targets for BT 2020. It's these squares right here. If you also had the targets for P3 and 709 marked, that I think would be very good.
They are there, but why the software isn't allowing it, I have no idea off the top of it.
You've seen it.
I use it all the time.
Okay, so in this version of the software, which is the latest version.
That's interesting, yeah, because actually I don't recall seeing these three new charts where they had it separated out. I was able just to pull up a sweep chart and then swap out for the different standards.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So well, that's...
This may be a workflow I just haven't checked out yet. It may have a bug in the workflow, but typically it gives you the option to select whatever sweep levels you want.
Right.
This one just happens to be stuck at 100%.
It does, and I don't know why.
It's not giving us any sweep. We're sweepless.
Yeah, we're sweepless. We're sweepless in Seattle. No, sweepless in Petaluma.
But thankfully the color checker worked, and that provides enough data points across the whole palette to where we were able to... That was pretty damn impressive looking, actually.
Yeah, it was.
For a factory preset at that.
Yep. Totally agree.
So folks, I think the takeaway would be, one, if you're doing your HDR setup on your B6 OLED, use that standard
HDR standard mode.
The bright mode was a little too crazy.
Yep, and the vivid mode we didn't even look at.
Didn't even bother. Kids might love it.
Yeah, they might. Okay, and here the post-calibration view is going to be the same as the pre-calibration view because we didn't do any calibration, but we'll just run it anyway to gather the data, and it should look about the same. So it looks at color first, and then it's going to go to grayscale, and we're going to look at EOTF. Those of you who don't know that term, it stands for electro-optical transfer function, which is basically how much light the TV puts out when it gets a certain code value for brightness. So it gets a digital value. It says the brightness is X. How much light is the TV going to produce when it receives a value of X? And that is determined by this EOTF. Now, in standard dynamic range, what we've been working in for years, the EOTF was called gamma. That's a particular type of EOTF. Now, in high dynamic range, typically what we use for EOTF is called PQ. Which stands for Perceptual Quantizer.
I love that name.
I do too. And it's based on a couple of years of research by Dolby into how the human visual system works. So the HDR that we're doing now uses the PQ EOTF. Standard definition, a standard dynamic range uses gamma. And we see here the same result as we saw pre-calibration.
And there's some other standards too, like hybrid log gamma.
Hybrid log gamma is another one. That's a different EOTF.
And it has some benefits that may be of interest to people doing broadcast video.
Particularly, exactly.
You want to do one format that would support your HDR and SDR TVs, things like that.
Right, exactly. Okay, so I think we've got all of our data here.
Looking good.
It's looking pretty good for not doing anything to it.
Exactly. the best result.
The best result of all, absolutely.
Oh, this TV's fine.
So I'm going to view report and save session. And oh, damn.
As long as you save the session.
Yeah, but I saved it as Leo's LGB6 SDR.
It'll save it even if it's the same file name. It'll save it as separate ones, and yeah, you're able to go back and dig through
and rename them. Okay, good. So yeah, the pre and post are just about the same.
Fairly identical. The only thing I would have maybe done is on the pre show off the performance of that default preset that it was on that bright mode.
Oh, you mean that bright mode? Yeah.
So off the charts in terms of where color should have been and everything.
Oh, and here's another bug. I think I tried this before. It doesn't populate the color, in the report.
See, because I'm wondering if that's related to the lack of the sweeps values as well and things like that.
Yeah.
So
I'm obviously going to be talking to them about this. Okay, so now I think we're about done with measuring.
I think so.
I think we should look at a little content.
I think so. Verify our work.
Exactly. So we will be back to you in a moment. Okay, we've finished calibrating as much as we can. We have taken down the meters and all that stuff, and now we're going to watch some real content. Yeah.
Actually, I went through some of the devices, everything that I found that was connected, and just verified that everything was set up properly.
Okay,
like
including the AV receiver.
AV receiver, the
It's just doing
maximum
a pass-through.
the cable box, the game console. Just verify that everything's putting out max resolution or native resolution, best audio quality, things like that.
Okay, good.
Far too many times you'll find something's just totally set wrong.
Yeah, I'm glad you checked that out.
Correct it now.
Absolutely.
Currently, we're running some well-produced 4K ultra high-def content through a UHD Blu-ray player.
Actually, the Xbox One S.
Yes, and we're just evaluating some natural color scenes.
This is HDR as well.
It is, and I believe a lot of this was recorded by Florian.
Yes,
and
Florian Friedrich, who's been a guest on the show.
Has access to one of the best camera systems out there right now. So he's actually finding content and creating content in the widest color spaces and getting it out for test scenarios like this. But it's some of the cleanest looking content I've looked at in a while. So
it's really beautiful.
Good
and here,
reference.
Okay, so we're getting, it looks like maybe a little clipping in that guy's face. This is looking very good. And here we have faces against a black background, and the black background, unfortunately, it's not quite dark enough yet. There's a little bit of reflection of the window behind us, but generally speaking, the whitest parts of this are up there as high as they can go, much higher than you would see on a standard dynamic range
without
set.
a doubt.
And here's with 100% white behind the guy.
There is a little loss of information at the peak white.
Yep.
Just because of the display's inability to go up beyond 1,000 nits.
Right. Right. In fact, it doesn't even go as high as 1,000.
Exactly.
It's more like 600.
So it's having to do a little, take what it has and map that information to it.
Right. Exactly.
And it does an exceptional job. I mean, these white background scenes are worst case scenarios.
Absolutely.
Like that for this TV. This is not typical of most content you're going to be looking at. The outdoor nature scenes we were looking at, natural color food and everything. I'm quite pleased.
Yeah, this really does look quite good.
And I'm hungry. No, not desserts.
Oh, yeah, we're in deep trouble now. Let's go take a look at some of the evaluation patterns. You have the controller. Let's go to tests and adjustments.
That one with the grayscale, or is it the basic setup?
Yeah, I think so.
It shows basically the limitation of the TV in terms of what is the brightest nit range it can do.
Right.
And on the clipping area, though, I see very little, if no differentiation between 10,000, 4,000, and 2,000.
Well, you shouldn't see any there.
Exactly.
But you should see some in this highlight area. So we might want to turn contrast down a little bit.
I just don't think there's anything there to map, to be honest with you, on this display.
On this display,
because this is a competitor's test material to highlight the benefits of their display technology.
Right. You're exactly right.
So they found the spot just above where their competitors can hit.
You're exactly right. I had totally forgot the OLED can't go to 950, 1000, or 1050. So it's going to all be clipped.
It's blending all of that,
Yeah.
or depends on how they want to do it. So, and that's again with competitor test material.
Yeah. Okay, so color bars.
Oops, sorry, I think I've got this running it.
Is there any way to just go to the next one?
I would love to.
Okay, here's an overall pattern that shows a bunch of different stuff.
I'm not seeing any clipping in color.
No. A little bit of clipping up. Well, certainly, I mean, you can see it up here.
There is where about 70.5 or so.
Right. At around 650, you can still see the bar here, but then above it, you can't. And that's totally in line with what this TV can do.
Oop. Oh, there's a touchpad on the bottom that I keep screwing with. That's what's got me.
It's got some natural color stuff along the bottom. Yeah, and again, remember we were talking last time about the difficulty it has in low light coming out of black, and I think we're seeing that here as well. And that again is a characteristic of the LG OLEDs. Oh, meter positioning target. So if we had our meter back up, we'd put it right there. Here we would be able to measure what the peak brightness is.
10% window.
10% window meaning the area of this window is 10% of the area of the entire screen.
Oh, window size 50%. Okay, yeah, this is just the show off.
Yeah.
With different window sizes, how it may affect peak brightness as well.
And it will affect peak brightness for sure. As more of the screen becomes bright, the overall light output has to be decreased. It's just the nature of the beast.
Otherwise, they end up with power issues, overheating, and other consumption problems that not good for the display.
Here's 100% white. And it's interesting that the OLEDs often, they talk about off-axis not being a problem in terms of blacks, but in terms of color shift.
Oh, yes.
And so way over here, I'm seeing a bit of some blue or cyan shift, which when I come straight ahead is gone.
Yep. I find that a lot.
Yeah.
In the corners I see a lot, especially if you change axis up or down or to the sides. You'll see it the most in grayscale in particular, I find, or any kind of white.
Right. Oh, and this is great because the sun comes up and starts tracking across the white landscape.
I want to say you shot this on one of those Cinalta.
Probably an F65. The Sony F65 camera is the top of the line.
That almost looks computer rendered.
Cinema camera, yeah. And here's a perfect example of high dynamic range. That sun is probably mastered at 1,000 nits. We're seeing it at 600. But you can still see detail in this dark part. I mean, it's not quite as much as I might like because it's an OLED and it doesn't come out of black as well, but you can still see plenty of stuff in there. And on a standard dynamic range, that would all be much more compressed.
Oh, yeah. There's really, beyond the color and beyond resolution, of course, it's really that ability to do those peak bright details.
Yep.
And I find it,
and dark details,
especially in naturally lit scenes like outdoor shots and sunlight. You realize how you've really never seen a good outdoor shot on regular TV.
That's right.
Until you see it on an HDR TV where it looks like sunlight's. It can be almost painful to see some of these scenes the way they're authored and mastered.
Yeah, exactly. Now the Revenant, which I have here, and we should play a little bit of, all the outdoor shots, of which there are many, were only shot in available light. They were not lit by artificial light. So that's
probably using very capable cameras.
Yeah.
Grab the f-stops needed.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want me to throw in something else?
Yeah.
I am not a fan of the Xbox controller yet.
No, I'm not either.
It takes me a minute. I will get used to it.
So that was a little bit of the Samsung test disc, which is not yet available to the public.
No problem playing an ultra-high def Blu-ray on that either.
Yeah, well, that's very nice. That's very nice. Oh, my box is here.
The Revenant?
Oh, yeah, the Samsung disc is there. Pull out the Revenant. Wait, do you have that? You have the Revenant.
Yeah.
I think mine was not even unwrapped, so put that in there. Now, I saw the Revenant in the theater in Dolby Vision, high dynamic range, and it was gorgeous. But I had to leave about shortly after the bear attack, because it was just so violent and brutal. I did not want to fill my head with that imagery.
I was going to show you Deadpool, but now I'm thinking maybe not.
You know, it's
humorous, but
it's humorous, and it's a great HDR title.
I don't even know if that's the case, but
well, I mean,
I like it as a movie.
See, okay, maybe you're younger than I am. I don't know, but the young folks seem to like it a lot. I was so not interested.
Oh, I blame my father.
All right. I don't know what. Tell me what chapter would be good.
You got me. I haven't even watched this yet. No spoilers.
No spoilers. You haven't seen it at all?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, the last movie
he gets attacked by a bear.
That's pretty much the only thing I know.
There's a scene in here that's several scenes like that. This is a scene in the forest at twilight, I think, with a campfire, and it's amazing to me. This was before the bear attack, fortunately. How much dynamic range there is in this, and shot in totally available light, just what was there from the campfire.
Some video smoothing is on or something.
Yeah.
It's annoying to no end.
So here's the interesting thing. LG OLEDs have frame interpolation. I don't know why. Excellent. But we're going to turn that off now.
Oh, every TV has something. You got to have that checkbox feature, so I'm not even sure if it's in this section.
I'm not sure. Oh, it might be under picture options. Oh, that should all be off.
Yeah, not for regular TV.
Wow.
You leave noise reduction on for those because they're
True motion.
They're so full of freaking. And de-judder maybe 1, de-blur can be maxed, maybe 2. It depends. If there's no artifacts, I'll leave it at 0.
Leave it at 0.
But sometimes these TVs don't do the 120 hertz 5 multiplier that well.
Right.
That looks pretty good, actually. Even at 0.
Yeah, I would have just turned it off. But as you say,
it depends on the cinematographer.
Yeah.
See on the edges, that's just too much distortion.
Yep, I agree.
I mean, as much as it may be pure to leave it completely off, I think the TV's not doing something maybe proper 5.5 or depending on how would it be 5? 24
Yeah,
times?
It would be 220. And what we're talking about there is instead of frame interpolation is when the TV actually takes the incoming frames from a movie, say at 24 frames per second, and then synthesizes new frames to go in between those real frames and calculate where things in motion would be. But it also introduces an artifact called the soap opera effect. It makes a film look like it was shot on video. And most people really object to that, so I generally turn it off. Oh, look at that.
I didn't see any banding or anything.
No.
It's a nice looking scene.
Yeah, the fire is nice and bright.
I take it this is not a happy movie.
It is not a happy movie. It's a really disturbing movie. Look at that. That's so cool. With the moon and the trees going up like that.
I would have to look at more film content to see if I would want to bring up the de-judder function, anything above 0. There's just some movies that the cinematographer just panned too quickly or something, and it just...
Well, but that makes it filmic, that makes it movie, that makes it cinema.
I'm thankful that we're just getting more stuff being shot at 60 plus frames a second, and they can still make a 24p video out of that with better clarity per frame.
Yeah.
Still, there is something about film.
There's
a look to it that's...
I myself prefer, I really like high frame rate. When Ang Lee's movie, Billy Lynn's long halftime walk comes out, that was shot at 120 frames.
Really? I'll check the look.
If you can find it.
Okay.
There aren't many theaters that'll show it at 120 frames because the projectors aren't quite there yet. The digital cinema projectors.
There's a mix of the sun in the background, dark interior.
Yep. That was a classic example. There again, the moon in the background. Actually, this subtitling is a little distracting because it's so bright.
It is. Is that in the movie, or is that?
Yeah, no, it's in the movie because they're talking in
Wow,
native.
Another good scene.
Yeah, with that sun right there.
And the cameras to capture that kind of information too.
Mm-hmm. Look at that. It just looks more realistic.
Oh, without a doubt.
More like you're looking out a window.
That is exactly how it should be described.
Yeah. And you remember when HD first came out and everybody said, it's like looking out a window.
Hardly.
This is so much more than that.
You walk outside with any kind of light meter in direct sunlight.
Oh, yeah.
You're like 100,000
Yeah.
lux, whatever measurement you want to take. It is so much brighter than what
any TV
any
can
video you've ever seen. So you need to be able to put this kind of light output to your eyes from a display device to get something even approaching,
reality.
What we see out the window.
Yeah, exactly. This gets a lot closer.
Without a doubt. And the format, container, Rec 2020, everything, it's good to go down the road. So as these displays get better, they can author content to higher and higher levels of performance.
Yep, exactly. And that's another one of the really beauty parts of HDR is that it's set up, we aren't exploiting all of it by any means. It can go a lot farther than it is now. It gives it room to grow so that we don't have to in 10 years or 5 years say, oh, you know what, we've now exceeded the capabilities of the system, we need to do another one. I think they were wise, those who put it together.
Agree completely.
Yeah. To give it enough headroom, enough expansion room to say, hey, TV technology and filming technology, capture technology is going to get better over the next 10, 20 years. And we now have room for it in the system we just developed, we just designed.
Oh, see, that was another good shot, where as he was panning, you just get a jump on the edges of everything in the frame. I find it mildly distracting, but
yeah,
I'll typically bump it up 1 or 2, but if it's up to the owner.
Yep. So just to finish up the basic settings, which we should have talked about at the beginning, but we didn't, so we'll talk about them here. We want to go into the picture options, where we have a bunch of noise reduction and various enhancement things. I like to turn all these off. Robert, you like to have them on at least a little bit for certain content.
Yeah, most of your broadcast TV content's going to have some kind of a noise in it. Either, generally it's a lot of compression, especially you'll notice it most in sporting content and other things.
Which means maybe keep turning on MPEG noise reduction.
It can help a little bit. But
I'm a purist myself. I just leave them off and whatever's coming
When
in.
I have great sources that don't need that, it's ideal to turn it off.
Exactly. Black level, we set to low, which is what it should be. And true motion, which is frame interpolation, we noticed that was looking kind of funky.
Totally.
So we turned that off.
It has a custom mode too if you want to do it separate for film or video.
The other thing I wanted to point out is the sharpness. We didn't really spend too much time on the sharpness, and we don't have a pattern up to show it, but at the default value, it was looking a little over enhanced, and so I just reduced it to 5 in both cases, and that worked just fine. And then I guess we need to apply to all inputs. Well, that's it from Leo's house. We've had a great time, haven't we?
Heck yeah! Beautiful pixels.
Beautiful pixels. I have to tell you that calibrating for me is almost a meditative pursuit.
It kind of has to be. To keep track of all the small details, you kind of got to put yourself in the moment and not be too distracted.
Exactly. It's been great working with you again.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. And in fact, you're coming back next week, aren't you?
Awesome. Yes, I will be there. We will talk about
We will talk about all this since we're not on live stream now.
No.
Let's talk next week.
We've compressed about half a day into this video.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the details.
So next Thursday we'll be live.
Yep.
Live streaming and with the chat room. So chat room folks can ask questions at that time about this or really anything else, and we'll have another good time then.
Heck yeah.
Thanks so much.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
So Robert's website is heronfidelity.com. Be sure to check it out, where you got all kinds of cool stuff there, I know.
I do.
You
including
do?
links to all my work.
Yeah.
Also on Twitter. Hit me up any way you want.
Exactly. You can always find me, of course, at avsforum.com. You can email me at scott@twit.tv. And you can follow me on Twitter at htgeekscott, also at avsforum. You can always find previous episodes of Home Theater Geeks right here at twit.tv/htg and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/twit Home Theater Geeks. And I'm sure looking forward to seeing you again next week.
Me too.
Where we get to geek out even more.
Awesome.
Awesome. Until then, geek out.